Bear with us. We are now recording, going live on Facebook. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Like I said, we're getting ready to go live on Facebook right now, and then we will get going. We're going live on the Startup Junkie Facebook page. If you have friends or colleagues, coworkers that you think may benefit from this presentation and they did not sign up in time, then you can direct them to the Startup Junkie Facebook page where they can watch it live. So we will get going. It's 12 o'clock Central Time. My name is Caleb Talley. I'm the Director of Marketing and Events at the Startup Junkie Foundation. For those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, we are a mission-driven organization based here in Northwest Arkansas. Our office is on the Fayetteville Square. If I look distracted, I'm just people watching out my window. Startup Junkie supports, inspires, and educates entrepreneurs and innovators by providing no-cost, one-on-one consulting, events, workshops, programs, things just like this that you are participating in today, and we thank you for being here. We remove barriers for historically underserved populations by democratizing access to entrepreneurial resources and providing strategic support to any individuals seeking to start or grow their business. We're excited today to have a couple of presenters on the topic of cybersecurity. Our presenters include Nicole Limpert. She's a second-generation insurance professional, and she serves as a cyber production underwriter for Evolve MGA. From startup ventures to publicly traded companies, Evolve helps to identify, manage, and transfer commercial cyber risk. We also have with us today Bo Biddle. He's the owner of Biddle Armstrong Insurance and the former public finance vice president for Stephens Inc. Prior to his 4-year stint at Stephens, he served as the Fayetteville market president for Signature Bank from 2004 to 2014, and he served the Northwest Arkansas community in various leadership and volunteer roles, including with the Fayetteville Public Library Foundation Board, commissioners of Fayetteville, City of Fayetteville Civil Service Commission, chairman of the I can't speak today. Chairman of the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce, and much more. So without further ado, I will turn it over to today's presenters.
Thank you, Caleb, very much. This is Bo Biddle. I apologize for not being on the video. I've got a meeting not far from where Caleb is right now at City Hall, and so I'm transitioning my way there. And before I open up my part, I'd be remiss not to thank Bill Wheeler, who's a participant on this call. Jeff Amorine had connected us, and Bill brought it full circle by hooking Nicole and I up with Caleb to have this opportunity to present to you today. So thank you, Bill, very much. As Caleb said, I'm the owner of Biddle Armstrong Insurance. My business partner Rob Armstrong and myself are the owners of that agency. And the agency was founded in 2002. We are an independent agency that primarily works in the property and casualty space. We're about 75% of our work is in that space, and then we also have about a quarter of our business that's in individual, group, life, and health insurance as well. So we're pretty diversified and provide comprehensive insurance services for both individuals and businesses. On the property and casualty side, we're about 40% home and auto, and about 60% business liability and property. And over, I would say probably about 2 or 3 years ago, we had the opportunity to sit down and visit with Nicole Limpert from Evolve on this call, and she was able to tell us that you'll hear much more from her about what Evolve does. But essentially, they specialize in cyber cybersecurity insurance. And my partner and I had, been watching the industry for some time, and how that specific line of insurance has developed over the years. And originally it wasn't even a thing, right? And as hacking and events became more and more prevalent, a lot of the standard property and casualty insurance carriers and companies across the country began to include small sublimits of coverage for that type of risk, which was somewhat appropriate for starting out for that kind of risk. But as times have developed, what used to be for instance, for a bank, the stick 'em up, give me your money risk has now really turned into cyber threats across the banking industry and all business and personal space as well. And so we really love the fact that Evolve focused on that risk, and it became something that we thought was very important to include and offer for all of our business clients. And so we began both with new business opportunities and with existing accounts at renewal, showing and explaining what Evolve offers. And we, today there is not a more comprehensive cyber security insurance product in the market than what Nicole and Evolve have developed. And again, she'll go into that more, but we certainly appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I also am very appreciative. I continue to drag Nicole around to anyone that will listen about cybersecurity insurance, because we just think it's really important. And I will turn it over to Nicole at this point and let the expert do her thing.
Thank you, Bo. I appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen for you guys, so you should be able to see like a big blue scary hacker guy on the screen. Can you see that right now? Okay, perfect. Yes, so my name is Nicole. Nice to virtually meet all of you guys. I am with Evolve MGA, and I am based out of Austin, Texas. So I was raised and grew up in the Dallas area, but I do have my Arkansas ties. I was a Razorback, so graduated from the U of A back in 2017. And then 2 weeks after I graduated, started out in the insurance industry. So I actually started out my career similar to what Bo is doing on the retail insurance agency side, but then made the switch over to cyber insurance about 3 years ago now. And it is a very, very interesting topic. So I had spoke to Caleb before you guys all logged on that this isn't going to take an hour, this presentation, by any means. So we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A if you guys do have questions that you want to dive a bit deeper into here at the end. So we'll go ahead and jump in. Agenda for today. So we're going to do just kind of a high-level overview of what cyber insurance is. I will touch on the top 2 attacks that we see, which are ransomware and fraudulent transfers. I'm going to dive a bit into the how the hackers actually do these attacks, and then we'll wrap up with some specific attacks that have happened on venture capital firms and what you can do to better protect your business. So, what is cyber insurance? I'm sure all of you guys have thought this question before or have asked somebody about it, hopefully, fingers crossed. But I like to think of it as protecting your intangible assets. So, 20, 30 years ago, you would walk into an office building and see piles and stacks of papers, physical documents. And this was the way that businesses, held their data. This was their form of record keeping. And now as we move further and further into the 21st century, all of that is becoming electronic. So it's really becoming intangible now. And that's what cyber insurance is really there to protect, ultimately your data and your bank accounts. Now, cyber policies are set up with 2 sides to them. So you have first-party coverages and third-party coverages. The first party side, these are those direct costs that you have to pay when that cyber attack initially occurs. So paying for things like legal advice, IT forensics, maybe reimbursing for a fraudulent transfer or any lost income that the business experienced because of the cyber event. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the news as of late, but the Colonial Pipeline just got hit by a cyber attack. You know, they're having some really large business interruption because they're not able to do their day-to-day operations because of this attack. That is something that can be reimbursed by a cyber policy along with reputational harm. You know, if you lose customers after an attack, reimbursing for all of that lost income. All of those initial costs, those can be considered first-party coverages. Then you have the liability side, and this is after the cyber event occurred. Now, because of the cyber event, is someone bringing a lawsuit against you? You know, maybe you lost a lot of people's information and they're bringing that, you know, privacy suit against you, or maybe you passed on a virus to someone and now that entity is suing your business. Historically, this is actually where a lot of people's minds go to when thinking cyber insurance. And that is usually why many think that they don't need it. You know, if you don't hold a lot of that sensitive data, then, you know, you really don't need a cyber insurance policy. But if you look at this little graph on the left-hand side, what's kind of interesting is about 4% of the claims that we see trigger a liability section. So what that means for you guys, what's most likely going to be affecting your business when a cyber attack occurs is all of those costs associated with the first party coverages. So that's really where you want to focus on and what's most likely going to save your business if one of these events happen. And why do businesses get hacked into? Why are hackers even doing this? Well, every single industry in this day and age is collecting some sort of sensitive information, whether that be a form of a sensitive record or just business critical data that you need access to conduct your day-to-day operations. And the majority of that is held in technology nowadays. As I said, we are moving away from the pen and paper format of record keeping, and all of that is held in our computer system. So if you don't have access to that for an extended period of time, it could cause some damage, and hackers know this, so they're going to try and take advantage of the situation. Third, every single business performs some sort of financial transactions. The majority of those are electronic nowadays. It's very easy for hackers to just intercept some communications, change a couple of numbers on an invoice, and then you have, you know, a fraudulent payment sent out. And then lastly, guys, every industry has a human workforce, and the number one cause of cyber attacks, it is us. It is the humans. We are the cause of it. It's just someone clicking on a link that they shouldn't have or sending payment to somewhere they shouldn't have, and it can cost a business thousands, if not millions of dollars sometimes. And I think this slide is pretty cool because it kind of just puts it into perspective for you guys locally. Each year, the FBI compiles all reported losses due to hackers and then splits it up by state. So you can see in 2020, the state of Arkansas lost a little over $17 million due to hackers. What I thought was pretty interesting about this number is if you compare it to last year, the actual loss number is lower. Maybe there was, you know, a couple really large attacks within the state in 2019. But the victim count is extremely higher. It's over double. And I have some stats that I'll show you guys just with the past year in terms of cyber attacks. Really just due to COVID and the working from home environment, hackers just kind of went on a tear. So over 260% growth over the past 4 years within the state. We're just going to continue to see that rise. On the left-hand side, there are a couple of local attacks that I've listed for you guys here. First, March of 2020, Arkansas Children's, they experienced a ransomware attack that affected every single one of their locations. They had to delay appointments and procedures, and, you know, depending how long they're down for, that can be some pretty large losses for the hospital system. I'm not sure if any of you guys were affected with that. And December of 2019, we had Sherwood Telemarketing Company. They actually had to temporarily shut down after the cyber attack occurred. They couldn't sustain the losses that it brought, and they had to actually lay off some of their employees. It was right before Christmas time. Not a good scenario for anybody, but this is what we see time and time again. A business hit by a cyber attack, the losses can be felt very quick and very immediate, and a business, you know, without a good insurance policy just can't sustain those losses. And, you know, we have seen some businesses have to shut their doors. So diving into the top two attacks that we see, which are ransomware and fraudulent transfers, these happen to every single industry because they occur through email addresses and bank accounts. And every business in this day and age has an email address and a bank account. every person in this day and age usually has an email address and a bank account, which I can go down a whole nother rabbit hole of personal cyber insurance, but we're not going to focus on that today. So doing a breakdown of what these look like. Ransomware, this is the most frequently occurring attack that we see. And this is what happened to the Colonial Pipeline entity, I guess it was just earlier this week or last week. Essentially, all that ransomware is, it sounds like a very scary, daunting term. It's just a computer virus that gets downloaded onto your system and then essentially holds your data hostage. So I like to think of it as, you know, instead of in those action movies where they're stealing the president and demanding $7 million to return them, instead they're doing that to your computer. So they make a demand in some form of cryptocurrency saying that you need to pay X amount of dollars within 24 to 48 hours, or they will destroy or release your data. There are some other costs associated with these ransomware attacks, including, you know, data rebuild, system rectification, business interruption, the reputational harm, all of those initial first-party costs, and then obviously the liability side as well if your data does get released. Next, fraudulent transfers. This term is also sometimes known as social engineering. The cyber industry, we do not like to make it easy for you guys. Everyone calls, you know, the same attack very different things. So I've seen this as fraudulent transfer, social engineering, cybercrime, you know, funds transfer fraud. There's a whole wide array of names for that. But essentially with this attack, what happens is a hacker will pose as one of your trusted third parties. So as an internal employee, you know, maybe the controller of the company, the CFO, or they can pose as your clients or vendors, and they try and direct you to sending payment to some sort of fraudulent account. There was actually a pretty large attack locally here in Austin on a school district last year where someone had posed as one of their construction vendors. They were working on a new project within the district, and they said that they had new banking information. The person who's in charge of the transfers just didn't really think twice about it. It seemed like a legitimate request, and they sent out $2.3 million to a hacker's bank account. Completely unrecoverable. So again, these losses can be very large and they are felt very immediate. So I want to do just a quick dive into the how hackers are actually conducting these attacks, because I think it's pretty interesting. And the dark web is a big buzzword in the cyberspace. I'm sure most of you guys have heard of this term, but maybe you don't fully understand it. I was in at your shoes before I got into this industry, so I'm going to teach you guys about it today. So the picture on the right-hand side, I think, is a nice breakdown to kind of understand the dark web in a bit more detail. I feel like usually these pictures with icebergs come with motivational quotes, but today we're going to use it to explain the dark web. So this top third that you see here, this is the surface web. This is what you and I, know and use whenever we go to Google and type in insurance agency. It takes us from point A to point B. Then you have what people call the deep web. And this is still accessible by you or I, but you just need a username or a password or some sort of credentials to access it. So you can think intranets, online databases, basically those privatized, I guess you could say, connections or networks where, again, you and I could access it if we had the credentials to do it. And lastly, you have the dark web. So to access the dark web, you have to have some sort of special software to do this. The most common one is Tor, and it stands for the Onion Router. And this was actually a software that was created initially by the US government so that naval bases could communicate with one another anonymously. Because what Tor does is, instead of taking you from point A to point B, it'll take you from point A, ping you all around the world, and then take you to point B. So that's how it basically anonymizes, your search or whatever you're doing on that platform. And that is why it is used for a lot of illegal activity. So really, the dark web is kind of the starting and end point for hackers with their attacks. Most people assume that you have to be a very tech savvy, smart individual to be a hacker, but really anybody could go do this. So there are actually websites on the dark web where you can just go and download a ransomware virus and conduct your own attacks. We call this like an Amazon, but for crime services. So Crimazon is the term that we use. But again, people will create these viruses and then just lease them out. They'll charge either a small flat fee, or sometimes they'll charge a percentage of whatever ransom payments you receive. And then you can go wreak havoc on whatever businesses you'd like. And I really want to emphasize for you guys how much of an industry this really is on the flip side of this. The top left-hand corner of this website here, there's actually a support helpline. If you need any assistance with your newly purchased ransomware virus, just reach out to them and they will help you out. And then the right-hand side, this is actually a reporting platform. So you can see how effective your virus was in different countries, different browsers, different software solutions. So it's almost like a customer management system, but for your virus. They also have full org structures with these hacking groups as well. I could go really deep into this, but maybe that's for another day. But not only can you purchase and sell viruses on the dark web, this is where you also purchase and sell information. So there are these online marketplaces on the dark web, which kind of create this revolving door of hacking attacks, because what hackers will do is anytime that they're able to infiltrate a business and steal their data, they'll then go to the dark web and make it available for purchase. So you can think if you were a part of the Capital One breach, the Marriott breach, Target breach, any of those entities that have had, their information lost, you are most likely available for purchase on the dark web here. So you can see there's 1 million Australian email accounts, some Swiss email accounts, Amazon information, PayPal, social security numbers. And then what a new group of hackers will do will come onto the dark web, purchase a list of these breached email accounts, and then send out their own phishing blast trying to get into, another business. They'll still steal their data, go back to the dark web, sell it. So again, it kind of becomes this revolving door. But once the hackers purchase their virus, once they've purchased their email list, this is the end result. So you receive some sort of email and they're trying to entice you to click on something. I'm sure everyone on the call here today has received some sort of email like this before. And this one was actually sent to my work email about 1.5 years ago. And I like to show this to people because I emphasize how real these look nowadays. I mean, I had gotten this email. It said that a close friend sent me an e-card. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. When I first saw this, I was kind of excited. I was like, oh, cool. Someone's thinking about me. Let's go check it out. But there were a couple of red flags that made me realize it was fraudulent. The first and biggest one for me was there was actually a misspelling in the email address. It says it was from ecardDelivery@emessages.com, and there were 3 S's in messages. And this is a very common way that hackers will spoof email accounts. They'll either add in an additional letter or remove a letter because it's very easy for our human eyes to just kind of glance over that. There was also a lot of enticing language, not just saying a friend sent me an e-card, it was a close friend, and a lot of different areas for me to click. So had some red flags. The 3 S's in messages really gave it away. So I took a quick screenshot and then went ahead and deleted this one. But if you have ever received an email like this before, that is technically an attempted cyber attack. You might want to think about, would anyone in my office possibly click on something like this? Because if your mind goes to those 1 or 2 individuals, implementing some employee trainings would probably be a great idea. Because again, human error is the #1 cause of these attacks. It just takes one person one day to click on something they shouldn't have, and it shuts down the whole business. And I will say, no matter the securities that you have on the front end, these emails will still make their way through, whether they're coming from a fake email address or they can come from your legitimate contacts. People's inboxes get compromised all the time, and your software and your firewalls are not going to be able to stop that legitimate email coming through because it's coming from, a true account. So I have some examples here for you guys of some venture capital cyber attacks that have happened as of late. We had Kleiner Perkins. They actually had a laptop stolen, and this can be a cyber exposure. Cyber insurance not only covers, electronic data, but it also covers physical data as well. And that laptop that was stolen had information on their clients, business information, social security numbers, financial data. So when that happens, you want to make sure you're taking the appropriate steps for remediation. Personally identifiable information, PII, usually that's categorized just as someone's name and another piece of identifying info. So if you have someone's name and their birth date, email address, social security number, that data is technically regulated on a federal and statutory level, and there are remediation steps that you're required to do, such as notification and things like that. So they definitely had some costs associated with that laptop being stolen. This next one here, this one's pretty interesting. So this was a fraudulent transfer attack, social engineering attack. to where hackers were able to actually do what's called a spear phishing attack. So that means a targeted phishing attack. They're not just blasting out to a million different emails. They know exactly who they're trying to get to click on links. And they were eventually able to, after a couple months, if not year-long period, access the credentials of the finance teams for a couple of different private equity firms. And they created spoofed email accounts, probably just adding in an additional letter or removing a letter, and were able to get these private equity firms to transfer out over $1.3 million to their bank accounts. And I'm telling you guys, as soon as those funds are transferred out, there's usually about a 24 to 48 hour period where the bank can reverse those charges, but it's not usually found to be fraudulent until after that. And even within that time frame, if the hacker receives the funds and removes them from the bank account, they usually close that out and they're on to the next one. So again, the funds are standardly unrecoverable during these types of attacks. And then the last one, we had Transcend Capital. They had their server hacked into. This included, again, some sensitive information with social security numbers, addresses. It included information on their security and cash positions, which can be really dangerous. And, as an overarching look at some losses that can be incurred by venture capital firms when these attacks occur, first and foremost, incident response. This is going to be triggered every single time, and it is very, very important to have this implemented quickly. Time is truly money in cyber attacks. The longer the response time and, coordinating the team and making sure you have the right experts in place, the bigger and bigger the claim and the costs are going to be. So incident response, bringing in IT forensics, bringing in legal, making sure that, whatever breach actually occurred is closed up, and making sure that there's not a huge business interruption loss is very, very important. Business interruption, this reimburses for you not being able to do your day-to-day functions, and any lost income that you might have experienced while being down. Reputational harm, this can be very important for VC firms as well, because, if you lose a lot of your clients' information, maybe they don't want to partner with you anymore. Reputational harm, this reimburses for the loss of those customers. The data rebuild, of course, can be very costly. I think most people assume that if you have good backups in place, that you really don't have to worry about, cyber attacks or any of the losses associated with them. But I will tell you guys, the hackers are usually in your system for about 3 to 6 months prior to ever turning on their virus. So during that time, they're hoping that you back up your data with that dormant virus on it. They're doing recon on the business, looking through your financials, looking at what sort of ransom demand they should request, looking at how you communicate with other individuals, and really just getting a full understanding of the organization's structure prior to activating their attack. So they are weirdly very patient with it, but they have pretty good payouts when the attack is successful. And then, of course, that liability side. So if you did lose people's information or pass on a virus to someone, paying for, the legals, any fines that may have come in, court attendance costs and things like that. And then lastly, reimbursing for the cyber crime. So we do start out at $250,000 in cyber crime coverage. So to reimburse for those fraudulent transfers, I know I showed you guys a $1.3 million loss. Unfortunately, we can't go up to that amount, but usually we can go up to $1 million in this coverage for, additional costs. I haven't seen a market out there as of yet that will go over $1 million for it, because it's, again, an immediate loss that occurs. So some things that you guys can do to better protect your business, we call it the good cyber hygiene. First of all is checking if you've been breached. I have a tool that I'll show you guys here in a second, but there is this public website called Have I Been Pwned? And I'll send this presentation to Caleb too, so that he can distribute it to you guys. But you can actually go and see if any of your information has been a part of those third-party breaches. And if you have been a part of a lot of those breaches, then I would definitely make sure you're changing your passwords. And also, I would make sure that you know what to look out for in those fraudulent emails, because you are probably receiving quite a bit of them. Setting up multi-factor authentication, or MFA. This is one of the easiest ways to prevent against cyber attacks, because it is free to turn on. So this will essentially give you a second layer of verification prior to granting access to an account. So we've all probably used this when, you're logging onto your bank online, you get a text or a phone call to actually verify that it's you. Well, if a hacker's trying to get into your system, you're going to get a notification and realize that it's not you trying to get access, and it'll just kind of stop them in their tracks. Obviously, using a password manager, using varying and complex passwords, which I'm sure everyone here does already, right? That is very important as well. The employee trainings, huge thing, as human error is the #1 cause. And then lastly, good backup procedures do help to mitigate costs when ransomware attacks occur, but just making sure that they actually are being followed and implemented well. One of the best backup methods that we suggest is to do a 3-2-1 approach. So 3 different copies of your backups, 2 different formats. So maybe one physical and one being in the cloud. And then having one of those copies be offline or air gapped, as we call it. So disconnected from the network. It doesn't have that continuous connectivity, because when ransomware viruses enter your system, it's spreading to anything that touches it. So it's going to go into that backup if it's connected to the network. So you'll want to make sure that one of them is considered, offsite or disconnected, so that that virus doesn't automatically spread. Now, this is the tool that I have. If any of you guys want a dark web scan run on your actual business, just send Bo your website if you have one, or you can also send him your email address and we can run them for you. And essentially we'll just run a scan to see if any of your employee information is being bought or sold on the dark web right now. Pretty interesting tool. And again, it's no fault to the business. It's no fault to the employees. It's just something that happens all the time. But it is important to be aware of so that you can try and do some risk mitigation steps. I did run one of my old AOL email addresses for you guys in this, and on the left-hand side, you can see all of the breaches that I've been a part of. And it's kind of scary, honestly, to see the information that is released, because mine included email addresses, names, usernames, passwords, IP addresses, my physical address, phone numbers. So a lot of sensitive information there. And unfortunately, there's no real way to clean that up when it is found to be on the dark web. But again, employee trainings are a good tool. And we do have, I'll come back to this slide. If you guys do end up, wanting to look at a cyber policy, something that is unique to Evolve is we do have some free risk management services that you can implement to increase your cybersecurity on the front end and hopefully avoid an attack from ever occurring. 2 of those are employee training tools. So this first one here, Cyber Risk Aware, you can send out fake phishing emails to your employees, see who the clickers are. A lot of businesses will send those people to like a cyber rehab, get them all cleaned up, make sure that, they're not clicking on anything anymore. And then the 4th one down, Ninjio. This is just gamified cartoon videos that get sent out once a month. They're like 4 or 5 minutes long, really entertaining, and they focus on a different cybersecurity topic each month. So just trying to keep cyber awareness at the forefront of employees' minds. And then the last one that I'll touch on here for you guys, it's one of our newest providers. It's called BlackFog. It's really cool. It's actually ransomware protection software. So you can think of it as kind of like your antivirus and firewall, but on steroids, to where BlackFog can actually stop any ransomware attacks or ransomware viruses from being downloaded onto your system. And it can also scan for dormant viruses. We actually, we just implemented this service about 2 months ago, and 3 weeks in, we had a policy holder download this onto their system. We found a dormant virus on their network, and we're actually able to remove it before the virus ever got activated. So it was a nice little success story for us there. So pretty cool. But just for your knowledge, with the Evolve program, you do get those free risk management services. You can get a free dark web scan as well. And then you have that broad cyber policy to pick up, any losses that might come through. And it's nice to just have a comprehensive program, because then you get both the proactive and the reactive responses to where, if these attacks happen, it's a quick fix, you're back up and running within about 24 hours. And it's not something that's longstanding and detrimental to where, it can have really negative implications on your business. So that's all I have for you guys today. To summarize, every business has an exposure, because every business has that email address and a bank account, and it really just comes down to the human error. So make sure that you guys are at least just doing some due diligence into, cyber policies and your cyber exposures, to where you can kind of determine, hey, is this maybe something that we should consider moving forward, or, maybe, hey, we should table this for another year. So if you guys have any questions, definitely reach out to myself or Bo, but we can open it up to like a Q&A session right now if anyone has any other things they want to talk about.
Cool, that was fantastic. Very thorough, a lot of information in regards to the marketplace that I was not familiar with. So that's great information. If you have a question, feel free to drop in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask. If you're watching on Facebook Live, feel free to drop your question in the comments and we'll ask while we give people a minute to drop their question in the chat. I will, reiterate something you mentioned about the email you received to your work email. Trying to get you to click on that link. We were getting those very frequently, and somehow they had crafted the email to where it appeared like somebody else on our team. For instance, I'd get an email from our founder, Jeff Emerine. It would say Jeff Emerine, and he would ask us to go run this errand, pick up some stuff, and grab some gift cards, and he needs to see the back of those gift cards. I mean, just it's scary and frustrating at the same time.
Yeah, it's always scary too when the gift card scams come out. It's usually around the holidays that we see these really frequently. And something to be aware of in terms of cyber policies. So cyber policies could reimburse if someone were to go and purchase gift cards and then, they were sent to a hacker. But it's only going to be reimbursed if you use the business funds. So we actually had a scenario where an employee received the same email, actually went out and purchased them with her own money, and then it was sent off to the hacker, and it was a couple $1,000s. And because it wasn't the business's funds and the cyber policies were there to protect the business, unfortunately, that person didn't get any reimbursement, which is tough. But she did fall for the trick as well.
Yeah,
so
that is unfortunate. Is there any threat in continuing to communicate with someone via email? Say, if I knew that person was trying to scam me, and then I strung them along just to frustrate them for like an entire afternoon.
I would say maybe like karma wise, that's not going to turn out too good. I mean, as long as you're not clicking on things, you're okay. So I get this question a lot of like, if you just open up a fake email, is it going to download something onto your system? And no, actually, when emails first kind of started to become popular and a thing back in like the 80s, I guess, it would. So they kind of emails used to work like a web page where as soon as you opened it, it started to run script in the background, but they don't do that anymore. So you have to actually physically click on whatever malicious link or attachment they provided for the virus to get downloaded onto the system. But I would be a little scared to try and taunt the hackers because they can do some crazy stuff.
That's fair. I'm still tempted to troll them. We don't have any questions on the Facebook, and I don't see any in the chat so far. So what I'll do, Nicole, if it's okay with you and Bo, I will send this video link to everybody that registered. I'll copy y'all in the email in case they want to reach out to y'all with questions or more information, and I'll do that this afternoon.
Perfect. That works.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you, Nicole and Bo, for doing this for us. Thank you to Bill for connecting them to me. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Wonderful presentation, Nicole. Thank you. And Caleb, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, y'all.